I think about 10 years ago, what this church was, it was a dream and some 20-somethings and a few college students, and that's all that it was. The Summit Church in Raleigh, Durham, man, they sent us out in 2012. We had people leaving jobs, moving their houses, selling homes. It was just very much like the book of Acts, people leaving it all for the sake of the mission. We landed here the summer of 2012 and started the church in my backyard. That quickly grew. Me and Bobby drove around trying to find places in Greensboro, going to elementary schools and all this stuff to find a place to meet. We finally landed at Burmill Park at night. Man, we were setting up, tearing down every single week, but God was moving in a big way. We launched the church in September 2012 with 250 people. God just continued to move, and people were getting saved, and college students were finding us. And I look back on that time, it was a very sweet time.
You just need to throw that line. It was a very sweet time, like every 20 or 30 seconds.
It was a sweet time.
As that season at Burmill Park was coming to an end, we moved to the Regional Road location, which is now the Regional Road Kids Space, and God literally, over the next 4 months, doubled the size of our church. We went from around 400 or 500 people to 1,000 people that fall. We were doing 4 services a day during that time in this little space. We decided at that time that we needed to expand the Regional Road location just from that tiny kid space. And so we did the For His Name initiative. We were trying to raise $600,000. We actually ended up raising $1.2 million over that time and upfitting the current worship space at Regional Road. It just was an amazing time of what God was doing here at Mercy Hill.
It was a sweet time.
It's very sweet.
The next 5 years just felt like expansion in every area. We upfitted the new regional, that filled up. We were able to plant Clifton. That started this whole multi-site strategy now in High Point and Northeast and Espanol. We were able to start seeing churches get planted outside of the campus model. Now we have churches that are coming out of Mercy Hill. We started sending more missionaries to Peru and India. And it's almost like God was saying, hey, if your church is willing to open your hands and y'all are willing to do what it takes, man, then I'm gonna take you there. Right about that time, 2019, going into 2020, man, we just felt poised for the next jump, what God had for us. And man, we felt ready for the next phase of expansion. And right as we were feeling ready, man, the whole world shuts down for COVID.
The thing is, God wasn't taken by surprise with any of this, because in the season leading up to COVID, God was really preparing our church to minister during that season. Fall of 2019, we did our No More Spectators sermon series, where we really encourage people to get off the sidelines and get on the front lines of serving, not just in the church, but serving in our community and serving those in need. And then right before COVID, we did our Chosen sermon series, where we were talking about adoption, foster care, and literally the week before the shutdown is when we raised $250,000 for adoption and foster care. And the reality is, something that we said during COVID the whole time, you cannot quarantine the Great Commission. There was so much ministry that was happening in that season in our community, in community groups, adoption, foster care, people that were hurting. We're probably never going to be able to recount all the things that God did outside the walls of the church during that time.
A church doesn't really reopen because the church never closes. You know, we are the church. But at the same time, the programming and all that did have to get kicked back off. And in the fall of 2020, I mean, maybe the world wasn't even quite ready, but it was time. And we came back together. I look back on that, though, coming back in the buildings and opening the campuses, it was very hard. We had probably half the amount of people that we were normally having, half the volunteers, all of that. It was like the least amount of momentum I had ever felt in my whole ministry life. But we kept making decisions, betting on God's movement again in the future. Our leaders, our community group leaders, our staff, I just marvel at their faith, because even in the throes of COVID, we launched the Northeast campus, repositioned the Edgefield campus to be the student center, raised the money to buy the land for our new home and hub. And now, even over the last couple months, it feels like the most momentum I have ever felt, as we have seen so much that God is doing in our church just here recently. I think about what God has done with that small group of people. I mean, 20-somethings and college students and a dream. And I think about 10 years later, all the missional impact all over the world. And then the next thought I have is, what could He do with Mercy Hill if we were that launch team now in the next 10 years? Man, if thousands of people and all the facilities and all the resources, if we leveraged it all and said, God, you are our deepest desire to live as Christ, I truly believe that He could do more than we could ask or imagine.